I found out my son isn't mine after 6 years. The truth shattered my world. 6 years of my life were a lie, and I discovered the truth in the most unexpected, heart-wrenching way. A single visit, an innocent question, and suddenly my whole world was shattered. It all started a few weeks ago when I went to visit my sister-in-law to check in on her and see how she was doing after the delivery of her first child. We had always been close, like family should be, and I remember bringing my 5-year-old son along, thinking it would be a joyous occasion to celebrate new life and catch up with family. The days seemed normal, filled with laughter and baby coos, until I innocently asked my sister-in-law how she was handling the first few sleepless nights as a new mother. Suddenly, her demeanor changed. Her smile faltered, and I noticed her eyes were brimming with guilt. Before I could question her, she broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I rushed to comfort her, asking what was wrong, and after several moments she managed to get the words out. "There's something I've been keeping from you for years. You deserve to know the truth." I could feel the blood draining from my face. What secret could she possibly have? My mind raced through every possibility, but nothing could have prepared me for what she confessed next. Her voice trembled as she told me that 6 years ago, shortly after our wedding, my wife had drunkenly slept with her best friend. She emphasized how deeply remorseful my wife had been, how she had claimed it was the biggest mistake of her life, and how she had promised herself never to repeat it. My sister-in-law explained that she had stayed silent all these years, but seeing me so happy and devoted to my son filled her with unbearable guilt. I was stunned, numb with disbelief. The realization dawned on me that I was holding my son's small hand, the child I had cherished, and I suddenly couldn't breathe. You see, when my wife and I got married, I believed we had the perfect love story. We were high school sweethearts, and she had always been the light of my life. Our wedding was a dream come true, and a year later, we welcomed our beautiful son into the world. I still remember holding him for the first time, feeling an overwhelming sense of purpose and pride. I raised him with all the love a father could give, and he was my everything. We bonded over trips to the park, bedtime stories, and building Lego sets. In every sense of the word, I was his dad. But standing there, hearing my sister-in-law's confession, everything I thought I knew started to crack and fall apart. My heart raced, and my mind screamed at the possibility that this boy, my son, might not even be mine. Clutching onto a desperate hope that maybe it was all a misunderstanding, I left the house with my son and immediately went to take a paternity test, the results of which would soon obliterate my entire world. Waiting for those results was torture. Every second felt like an eternity, and I found myself watching my son more closely. I started noticing the little differences I had never paid attention to before. His features, his mannerisms, small things that, in my shaken state, seemed to reinforce my fear. When the results came back, I remember staring at the paper, my vision blurring with tears as my worst nightmare was confirmed. He wasn't mine. With my heart shattered, I waited until that evening to confront my wife. I waited for our son to fall asleep, trying to keep my composure so as not to alarm him. When I confronted her, I held out the proof and watched her face fall, her eyes widening in shock and fear. She asked me how I found out, but I wasn't interested in answering her questions. I didn't want to hear her excuses or listen to her justifications. I told her that we were done, that I wanted a divorce. She broke down, swearing that nothing else had ever happened, that she had been faithful ever since. But I couldn't believe a word she said. All I could see was betrayal. What happened next shook me to my core. My wife, in a desperate attempt to hold on to our life together, threatened to fight for full custody of our son. The son that, as much as it pained me to admit, wasn't even mine. The anger I had been bottling up erupted. I coldly told her that I wanted nothing to do with a child that wasn't mine. I would keep the dogs, our 2 beloved pups that we had raised together, but she could have the child. At this, she begged me to stay, reminding me that I was still the only father he had ever known. I couldn't take it anymore. I yelled at her, louder than I'd ever yelled in my life, telling her to leave and take her bastard with her. That night, she packed up and left, taking our son with her. The house, which is in my name, a gift from my parents, felt empty and cold. My dad told me that I made the right decision, that I shouldn't raise a child who isn't my blood. My therapist, who I now see 3 times a week, assured me that focusing on my own healing was essential, even if it meant distancing myself from the child I had raised. But despite all the reassurances, the pain lingers. The grief of losing the family I thought I had is overwhelming. As I sit here, trying to make sense of the chaos, I'm left with this empty shell of a life I once thought was perfect. My sister-in-law claims she confessed out of guilt, and while I don't know how genuine her motives were, it doesn't change the devastation left in the wake of her words. Right now, I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. I don't know what the future holds, but I hope that, with time, the pain will lessen. Until then, I'm just trying to piece my life back together.